Oh yeah, Scott will talk. All right, guys, you ready? All right, guys. So this part, I'm going to talk about how to evaluate a deal. And there's two basic parts to evaluating a deal: cash flow and equity gain. And I don't speculate. Okay. What's speculating? Anybody know the difference between speculating and investing?
Assuming that your value is going to go up.
Right. You're hoping, you got hope in there, right? You're guessing that reality is going to be different in the future than it is now. Sometimes it is, but I don't know. Like I go to a high school reunion, I run into somebody from like 20 years ago. They're like the same person still. You know what I mean? Like stuff doesn't change for the most part. So I don't bet on it to change because that's probably bad odds, right? So I don't say, it's like someone said to me like, well, you think Darby's going to come up? I'm like, I don't know, but Westchester is up. You think Westchester's going to become a hood? It's like, don't think so. You know what I mean? So it's like, why bet on that? Like, yeah, I'm going to bet on Westchester becoming a hood. My investment only works if that happens. It's like, it's the same thing as betting on Darby becoming Westchester. All right, so anyway. So basically, I look at what is, and it's very basic, and it's very simple. And people think real estate investing is risky. It's risky if you speculate. It's also risky if you drive with your eyes closed. Like driving with your eyes closed, don't recommend. So, cash flow. Rent minus expenses equals cash flow. So what rent will you get? Okay, that's like the first question. So when you're looking at a property that may be a rental, for example, a multifamily, like you guys just looked at, there's going to be a rent that the unit's getting right now. But there's also a market rent, okay? The market rent's more important, but if you do have somebody in there and they're paying a certain rent, it's kind of got some inertia to it, right? But how do we know what rent like a one bedroom in northern Delaware is going to get? Look at the comps. So 3 bedrooms in Westchester, for example. So let's say you're buying a 3 bedroom in Westchester and you're wondering, hey, what's it going to rent for? Well, what have the last 50 of them rented for in Westchester, right? Okay, we can see 3,800, one's up for 3,800. They got high hopes, right? And that's an interior road townhome, and people think I'm crazy looking for 4,500 for a house, okay? So, 23, 22, 3,000, 3,800, 1,900, 3,000, 2,200, 2,600, 2,800, 2,800, 2,700, 3,000. So, okay, it's not unreasonable. I think you have a 3 for 2,500 outside of the town in a pretty nice townhouse. So you can look at the pictures too and see like, how does this place compare to mine? How's the square footage compare? What about property type, right? Am I looking at a townhouse? Am I looking at a detached single family, right? And what's the condition? How modern is it, right? Renters really like flash. They're not going to fix it, right? So they're just trying to rent it out. Anyway, take the guesswork out. Look at what other stuff's renting for in that area or has rented for in that area. It's very basic. What are your expenses? So you got mortgage payment. You got to pay Sean, all right? PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. That's what PITI stands for. You'll hear that. Real estate people say that and they sound smart, right? All right, so also you got to maintain the property. You're going to have vacancy. Somebody moves out, you're not going to collect rent for a month, maybe 2 months, right? There might be an HOA, depending on where you buy, or condo association or whatever. My HOA on my Florida property is $675 a month. That's a significant expense that I have to account for. I have to like rent it for like 2 months to pay the HOA. It sucks. Management. Are you going to hire a property manager now or sometime in the future? They take about 10% on a long-term rental, and they take about 20% on a short-term rental. Water, sewer, trash, utilities. Often forgotten, but there's going to be a sewer bill, water bill, trash bill, and utilities. Now, if you got a multifamily, one of the really big things is, can you split these utilities? Are you paying them as the landlord? Is the heat heating the whole place, and the guy in the top's got the window open because it's freaking hot, and the guy downstairs cranking the heat up, right? And you're paying the bill for the oil heat. You want these split, and you want the tenants paying their own utilities, because when the water is free, it's a lot nicer to take a longer shower, right? So everybody runs more efficiently when they're paying their own things. So anyway, it's important to understand this. Now, a really big thing you can change in a property's operating expenses, because you're looking at your operating, your total income, right? You've got your capital expenses, which is buying the property, and then you've got your operational expenses, okay? Like, is the tenant mowing the lawn? Are you paying somebody for lawn care, right? You put in the lease, tenant's responsible for mowing the lawn. Here's a lawnmower, mow it at least once a month. That's part of our lease, okay? So just those little things can really change your whole cash flow. Because if you have to pay somebody $200 a month to mow the lawn, and it was, $200 cash flow, well, there it goes. See you later. So anyway, you have to really understand your expenses, and it's not overly complicated, especially if you've lived on your own. You understand like what's involved in paying for the house. But just important to think about all these things and make sure you consider them, and how you structure the rental agreement really matters. For example, in the one I'm working on, I'm going to ask them to pay sewer and water. So rental property calculator, Google it. Google rental property calculator. This will be the #1 result. It's called rental property calculator. Pretty complicated. It's free and simple, okay? So you're going to put the purchase price in, what your down payment's going to be, your interest rate, 30 years. I would just put $13,000 in for closing costs. It doesn't matter that much. Property taxes, insurance. Insurance is almost like always like $1,200, $1,400. I don't know why. It's just always that. Maintenance, $1,000 a year is a reasonable. Maybe you're paying sewer. Maybe you're like $1,200 in other costs. Okay. Then you figure out your rent from before. Put that in. Vacancy, I just leave at 5%. It's good to have a 5% buffer. Okay. And then what's your appreciation going to be? How long you're going to hold it? All that stuff. Okay. And then it's going to spit out some numbers here. You're like, okay, well, what's this? All right. So it's saying, hey, you're going to get $2,200, $1,200 for your mortgage payment, $110 for vacancy, basically just saying, hey, I'm not getting rent's cost. Your property taxes monthly, your insurance monthly, your maintenance monthly, other costs monthly, and then your cash flow. So this minus all of that equals that, and then that's that much a year, so $1,400 a year. Oh, well, actually, sorry. That is what it is a year. It's $2,590 a year. This is your net operating income. So what does this take into account? Mortgage paydown and appreciation of the property. So there's 3 ways you make money when you're holding a property. One is cash flow. The other is appreciation, which is also called inflation, really. And then, when you make this mortgage payment of that $1,200, maybe $300 or $400 is going and actually paying off principal, right? So you're making principal every year. So overall, the property is actually making you $1,400 a month. And the rate of appreciation just depends on the Fed and how fast they keep printing all the money, right? Which I personally am betting that they're going to keep printing money because they have a shit ton of debt. And that's how they're going to basically manage it, okay? So in my mind, owning real estate is awesome. So I have like $2.2 million in real estate. The Fed prints and devalues the dollar by 10%. I just made $220,000 doing nothing. Okay, so the appreciation part is really how almost everybody wins in the long term. Like that inflation just like fixes all problems. It just paints right over it like a bad landlord, right? You guys seen that meme where it's just like everything's painted? I love that because I've lived in those apartments. So one thing that's really important here to look at is your capitalization rate, okay? So I like to try to shoot for an 8 here. What does cap rate mean? It means if I'm putting out $100,000, after I'm paying all expenses except mortgage and interest, I made $8,000 prior to paying the mortgage, then 8 divided by 100 is 8%. That's your cap rate. So it's your rate of return on capital. They call it cap rate. So if this was $100,000, it'd be making $6,790 a year before I paid the mortgage. Not taxes and insurance, but before I paid the mortgage, principal and interest. Anyway, that just helps you understand, because some people can own a house and they'd be like, yeah, my house is worth 600. And I'm like, great. And they're like, yeah, I got an awesome interest rate on it and I barely owe anything and my payment, it's only like $1,500 and I can rent it for $2,200. And I'm like, but it's worth $600,000. That is a terrible cap rate. Even though you're cash flowing, your use of your capital is terrible. Because like you could be redeploying that money and making a much better cap rate. So you have to keep thinking about how are you using your money. So I just lowered the price to $215 and reran the numbers. Well, now my cap rate is 7.9 and my cash flow is $383. So my cash flow is much better. Now the other thing is like, well, what if I don't get $2,200 a month? What if I get $2,000 a month? All right, then my cash flow is $200, right? So that gives me again buffer. Everything you do, you shouldn't expect everything to go perfectly, because it's not going to go perfectly. Is anything in your life going perfectly? Me neither. So, you know, don't expect this. You know, have a buffer, right? Like if I was doing that big ass project I'm doing right now, and I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to make $30,000. Be like, Rob, you're a freaking idiot. Why? Well, you just put out $200,000 in cash from a HELOC and took a big ass mortgage and then did all this freaking work and you made $30,000. Well, $30,000 is a lot of money, yes, but my return on capital would be awful, right? So, you know, but if I was doing a 100K project and I made $30,000, okay, that's not that big a deal, right? So you're just looking at percentages and playing ball where you are. Equity gain. So again, I was saying like, I like equity gain, and Steve Seymour, my broker mentor, really taught me this. The money's made on the buy, the money's made on the equity gain. So a really important letter thing is ARV, after renovation value. What's it going to be worth when you're done with it, right? And this can be on your personal live-in flip. It can be on your house hack where your friends are going to live there while you're doing the floors. It can be it can be a multifamily property that you've improved the rents and pushed it, right? It's after renovation value. So ARV is minus your purchase price, minus your renovation price is going to be your equity gain. So what you paid for the house and how much you put into it. So if this is negative, you should not be doing the deal. Do not buy a fixer-upper just to buy a fixer-upper and say you fixed it up. I did that on my first house in New Jersey when I was 26 because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And I lost a lot of money. So this is super important. It's super basic, but super important that this is there, right? And then this should be significant if you're going to do all this, because it's a lot of work, right? You should get paid. If this is zero, just buy something already done, right? Why would you do all the work? How do we find ARV? So let's say I'm doing a 4-bedroom house in Westchester. It's 2+ bathrooms. I've got the square footage in down here, but you can't see it. I took that and I said, what's closed in the last 180 days, pending and active? So I'm looking at the comps. Same thing with rents, right? How do I know how much a house is going to be worth? I look at what's sold. That's of similar size, shape, color, whatever. What sold? So a 421 at that square footage sold for $800,000. This one had a pool, and I think this one had a pool. This one I don't believe did, right? So I can see 680, but I went and looked at the pictures of this. It's not going to be as nice as mine when it's done. So that's where I'm at, like 700, okay? Now, also that takes a little bit of real estate knowledge and a little bit of faith in yourself, right? You know, someone could say, well, look at, I think your ARV, Rob's 565. You know, it's like, I've seen what's been selling in my neighborhood in this area, and it's not anywhere near what I'm doing. So some knowledge, some expertise helps, but again, just looking at, okay, detached house, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, whatever. Okay, where's it at? If I said to you, oh, it's worth 900, you'd probably be like, yeah, okay, Rob, like there's nothing for 900. Like I had a lady call me up the other day and she's like, I want to rent my house out. I said, well, what for? She goes, well, it's in Chester Springs and I want to rent it out for $8,000 a month. I was like, okay. It was a nice house. It was like an $800,000 house. And I was like, well, let me just run the comps for you real quick. Well, not a single house in Chester Springs has rented for more than $5,000 a month. So it's not going to rent for $8,000 a month. I'm sorry, lady. You know, she's like, okay, well, she didn't end up hiring me, but, you know, what can I say? I gave her the truth at least. Can you do this on your own? Just like go to realtor.com and look at just solds. So you don't have to be a realtor. Now, as your realtor, I'm here to help you guys, like run comps, and I'll be like, yeah, be like, hey, I think I can get this rent. Like, I'm buying a place in Upper Darby. It's a 3-bedroom, 1 bath. What rent can I get? Well, here, boom, here's 20 of them. I'll email them to you, you know, or whatever. So we can help each other. But again, you can look at a lot of the comps and get a picture and see pictures and get an idea. So what do renovations cost? Like, that's a hard question, right? Like, well, how do you figure out what the hell anything costs, right? You're gonna make a list of what needs to be done to the house. So, okay, I gotta put in a floor, I gotta put in a new countertop, new cabinets, new this, new that, right? And then you're gonna price it out. Be like, I need to put a vanity. Well, how much does a vanity cost? Like, go on Home Depot's website and type in vanity, right? $300, $400, okay? Oh, shoot, I went too far. I clicked the button, I got excited. And you can call contractors and get quotes. You know, you can call a painter and say, hey, I got 4 bedrooms, this and that. They might say, I want to come to the house. But he's like, can you just give me a rough ballpark? You know, anyway, and you're going to put together a spreadsheet. I have a spreadsheet, I didn't have time to put it in here, but, you know, just kind of go through all the items. I got drywall, paint, you know, just think through the project. Okay, all right, I got to put the floor in, I got to put the base molding in, I got to paint the base molding. Okay, I got to paint the walls. I'm going to add some lights. I need an electrician for that. So you just kind of have to like think through the project. And you can kind of learn a lot on YouTube. I mean, before the internet, this was much harder. And over time, you're going to get a feel for it. It's like, how much is flooring? Well, it was like $3 a square foot. Now it's like $4 a square foot. How much to install it? Well, maybe like $2 a square foot. How much is it to refinish a floor? About $3 to $4 a square foot, right? So like, I start to know all these things off the top of my head just because I'm like constantly dealing with them. I had 8 trees removed. It was $7,500. I knew that was good price. I got 2 other quotes. One was $10,000, one was $12,000. How do you get tenants, and how do you know if they're a good fit? By the way, guys, we're pretty much flying through stuff, so if you have questions, let me know. So just like I list a house, I can list a rental on the MLS, and then it goes out to all the websites. You're going to pay a realtor for that, like 1 month's rent, half goes to me, half's going to go to the buying agent. But if you want to do it for free, you can just put it up on Zillow. I was talking to Scott Darling, who's one of my teammates. He's got 18 rentals, and he's like, I never put it on the MLS, and he's a realtor. He's like, I don't feel like paying the other realtor. So he just uses Zillow, and he says, I get like 20 applicants every time, and it's no problem. Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist. Craigslist seems like, I don't know why people think it's shady, but it does work. Networking with your sphere, I mean, you can just post on Facebook, hey, I got a 2-bedroom for rent, anybody looking for a place? And it's like, if you know them, man, that's a lot easier, right? Like, you could, like, more trust, you know? Or you know they're crazy as hell and you don't want to rent to them and they're broke, right? You can also hire a property manager, and a property manager will just do all this for you. Again, that's going to cost 10% of rents. There may be a fee, just like if you paid a realtor of like 1 month's rent to fill the property. One thing to think about is filling the property is expensive. You really don't want turnover in a property. And I was just showing a client, and I was like, oh, like this has basement storage for this condo. I'm like, people have a lot of crap. When do they move out? When the place is bursting with crap, right? And they're just like, I got no more room for my shit. So if you have additional storage, the tenant's gonna stay longer because they got more stuff and then more place to put their stuff, right? Same thing with a 1-bedroom. What happens when you have a kid and you live in a one bedroom? You got to move, right? Or you need to work from home or whatever it is. So you're going to have more turnover on a one bed. So that's why I tend to avoid trying to get a one bedroom place. But hiring a property manager can be sort of the easy button if you got a good deal and it's cash flowing enough that you can justify the property manager. Now, I'll say, being in the field, a lot of times people think properties won't cash flow well with a property manager. So it just depends, and depends on how active you want to be. I think I skipped another slide. But I just want to say, yeah, can you click me back? Evaluating a tenant, okay, yeah. So this is important, right? When you're looking at a tenant, you got to do credit checks, background checks, personal references, landlord references. There's a docket app to see if they've been beating their wife. There's a foreign warrant app to see if they're like a criminal. You can verify their employment, like call their employer, meet them in person, get a vibe. If you feel like the person just doesn't feel right to you, don't. There's fair housing laws, okay? I can't be like, oh, this person's of this race, I'm not renting to them, right? And like, your discrimination, you're gonna get sued for that. So you can't ask them if they have kids because of familiar status. You can ask how many occupants there are, but you can't ask if they have kids. Anyway, so you gotta know fair housing law. Because you don't want to evict people, right? You get somebody in and it's not paying, you gotta evict them. You gotta go to court. You gotta do all this other stuff. So you really want to try to avoid evictions. Evictions are gonna happen more in lower rent places and rougher places, just people with broker and they lose their job more, they're more on the edge. So, that's gonna be more of a problem in Upper Darby than Westchester or whatever. So some questions that you can ask them just when you're pre-qualifying. I got this from Scott actually. Any issues with your credit that I need to be concerned about? Do you have any pets? Like your buddy, right? He had this emotional support dog. Yeah. Scott was like, a lot of these people got these emotional support dogs. You can buy a certificate for $30 that says you got an emotional support dog. He's like, it's such bullshit. Anyway, how many occupants? So if you're renting a 2-bedroom and say, yeah, we got 8 occupants. I'm like, probably don't want 8 people living in my 2-bed, right? And again, know your fair housing laws. Know what you're allowed to ask, know what you're allowed to say, because you don't want to get in trouble. And just don't be a jerk either, be a good person. So, now I'm going to talk about how to get contractors. You obviously can do the work yourself, okay? Like, Alex has been working with me. She sees I do a lot of stuff myself, but I do also hire a lot of stuff. And I think like when you're first getting started, you might want to do more yourself, right? Because your time's not as valuable when you're first getting started, right? After you've been established, if you're making $300,000 a year, you become a very expensive painter, right? You don't want to hire a $300,000 a year painter, right? So when you're doing it yourself, you're essentially hiring yourself. Now, if you're making $20 an hour and you're paying a guy to lay floor $50 an hour, it really makes a lot more sense to be laying the floor yourself, right? Well, how do you learn how to do that? I didn't really do a slide on this, but I'll tell you, I just watch YouTube. And I'll watch like I wanted to figure out how to like tile my tub. And I watched like 3 or 4 different YouTube videos on it. It took me about an hour. And everybody walks into this tile job and goes, wow, this is the most amazing tile job. And they're like, how many tile jobs have you done? I'm like, well, like 2. They're like, this looks like commercial grade work. I had like my plumber said that to me. And he's like, sees a lot of work, But really it's because like I was like, okay, like I learned take a piece of wood and create a level surface instead of trying to go off the tub. The tub's not level. Why? Because it's graded so water slides off of it, right? But I learned that in a YouTube video. I didn't know that, right? I wasn't born knowing this stuff. I'm an engineer, but I wasn't born knowing this stuff. But you can learn pretty much anything. Now, drywall, taping and spackling, I hate.